let's start taking a look at some of the outstanding issues on the OLM repository. First issue was opened 7 hours ago. Operator deployment fails on AKS cluster. Bundle contents have not yet been persisted to install plan. Right, so I think we made a change recently to this message to make it more clear in the last sprint. Isn't that correct? That should be in the latest release.
Yeah, I mean, presumably this is a 0.17 install, not a 0.18. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But we might just need to ask them either to upgrade or to look at the bundle unpack job itself, because presumably there's an error somewhere. Maybe it can't connect to the catalog or can't connect to the bundle or the registry, or there could be a bunch of different reasons why this is happening.
Yeah. So what is this object? Is this the subscription or the
I think this is the install plan.
Install plan. Okay. This is, I would say this is a support. How do we want to triage this? Okay, I think we need to make a new milestone since we released 0.18 now.
I can do that in the background for you.
Okay, great. This, I guess, will just be in the backlog since it's kind of not entirely clear what the.
Yeah, I think this is backlog.
This is backlog. Okay. Is anyone interested in assigning this bundle unpack to themselves? I think.
I mean, you can put it on me. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, they'll come back maybe with some kind of issue and then may or may not be OLM related. Okay, I think we're all good on that one. Next up, please keep support for multiple namespaces, okay?
It's gonna be.
Please keep this feature in future releases and remove this warning. Especially need for Crunchy Postgres operator.
Yeah, I think this is maybe a misunderstanding of what we're talking about, probably.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this one for a while. I think the answer is operator groups are probably going to go away, and installing more than one operator into the same cluster is something we're going to stop supporting. But I think that maybe what this person actually needs help with is understanding the de-scoping that we're talking about, which I think this is one of the things I think every time we talk about this is very confusing for basically anyone who doesn't have like a deep understanding of what we're trying to do, which is we're not preventing anyone from doing anything to non-cluster scoped resources. We're just preventing OLM from attempting to install two different versions of a package. And we're getting out of the way of explicitly attempting to support specific methods of installation into specific namespaces, right? Like that's where I think it's important for us to keep referring to it as de-scoping as opposed to cluster scoping. It's not that only all namespace operators will exist. It's
Well, but the thing we brought up last time was there absolutely is confusion. And I think the important thing is the feature we need to keep is the ability to watch specific namespaces, right? Whether it be one, all, or something in the middle, right? From using in the new descoped world, that might be RBAC rules that turn that feature on. But we still need the ability to do that. So I think they're orthogonal things.
Yeah, totally. I think that's breaking those apart and then creating primitives for the understanding the scope of what you're allowed to look at and what you are watching is, I think, going to be really, really important here. It might be useful for us to I don't know. I don't know that we're at a place where we have any specific like this is what it's going to be instead. At a high enough level that someone can just read that and understand it.
Yeah, I think the thing that's confusing is the OCP doc talks about getting rid of the multi-namespace support, right? Which has nothing to do with descoping. That was specifically because of a scalability problem, which doesn't go away.
I think what this boils down to, though, is that this person is asking, can I still run my operator and watch either the entire cluster or multiple namespaces? And the answer is yes. So it just maybe like this issue is really, please go update the doc to be more clear. And then also, can you tell me whether I can still do the thing I want to do?
Yeah. Hey, I agree with you, Joe. And I think yesterday we were going to take an action item to try to get the doc updated to make this warning message a little more clear. And then try to clear up the confusion in the issue.
I think part of the problem is we don't have on our end like a good public facing description. We have like Evan's presentation, and we have that sort of in progress spec guide, which is very sort of complex, but we don't have a concrete answer to this specific thing anywhere. So that's probably why there's a fair amount of confusion, because there's no. And that's part of that effort, right? A big part of that effort of going to descoping, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, is actually to get the community on board with this change and make sure it's not like seen as a breaking change necessarily. So if I feel like we kind of, mention it, but then we don't give people the resource to see what we're thinking really. Should we link to that HackMD doc in here or not? It's not really good user documentation.
It feels like we just need a one-pager somewhere that kind of says, this is kind of what we're thinking this will look like in the future. So deprecating something without having the replacement figured out is hard because it creates a lot of FUD, right? And the HackMD document is super deep. And it took me a long time to really understand. I had to read it 4 times.
It changes a lot too.
Yeah.
Would it be unreasonable to just remove this warning for now until we have that one page.
Well, I don't know that the goal, like, so this warning specifically, I think the goal was, hey, just so you know, this is a problem today in existing clusters. You should avoid this the way that it's designed right now, because otherwise you're going to run into problems. And maybe it's fair for us to be more explicit that way, and maybe this the way it's written is not clear, but
The warning is wrong, right? So it's warning you about the wrong thing. It's warning you about multi-namespace watching instead of warning you about installing your operator in multiple times. That's really what I think the intent was, right? You want to get people away from installing their operator a whole bunch of times because you have all of that cardinality problem with all the cluster scope things, right? There's two separate things, two separate warnings, really.
Yeah, I think the warning that Kevin was talking about, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, is if you use multi-namespace watching, you're setting up a whole bunch of informers against the cluster when probably, if you really want using cluster scoped watches. And yes, there's probably some questions there about how exactly, like, what if you explicitly don't want to watch one of those namespaces, then what? So I think that's where things get a little bit more difficult.
Again, that warning doesn't give you any information about
right.
why that is.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
agreed.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
implementation detail on how you've built your operator.
True.
Yeah. Totally. Maybe this, I think maybe that's totally fair. I think maybe what we should do is just revisit that doc and give a lot more context into why we're saying don't do this and what you should do instead.
And we should probably echo that in the upstream doc too, right?
Yeah.
So it says the same message.
I don't know what our upstream doc looks like on operator groups in general.
It's a full-time job keeping up with all the changes in these two docs. I can't remember either.
There's a lot of information here. I don't think it has any warning or anything like that.
Right.
I would
Then
say,
again,
like, for the sake of time, let's basically say, like, our plan is to support, like, you'll be able to continue installing Postgres's in multiple namespaces. In the meantime, we'll go and update this doc for clarity, right?
um, I think that this is a support query again.
Do we have a docs label? Probably not a feature.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll take their label off. Milestone wise,
Seems like we should be able to answer and close this prior to 019.
does anyone want to take this action item? Or we can leave it for now and figure it out once the doc.
Well,
once the
I think
doc-
there's two things, right? Like I think whatever goes into that downstream doc is probably like we need to go talk to some OpenShift documentation folks and help them update it. And I think that's probably just like a red hat ticket we need to go create. The whatever we're assigning here is probably just to update some stuff in the upstream.
Yeah, I can take the action item for finding someone to write this, update the doc in the upstream docs.
All right, cool. Moving on. OLM should remove the resource created by the operator once it deletes the operator. Okay, 2 validation reports. So this is around GC for OLM managed resources that are
It's kind of not like it's kind of interesting. Like it's not. This is a feature that at a high level I think is frequently asked for, which is when I OC delete or kubectl delete CSV, I want the footprint of what I installed to be uninstalled, right? I think that the reason why this one is a slightly different thing is because what they're saying is their operator actually creates some resources which are just for the operation of the operator itself that are not associated with like any CRD, right? So it's not, they can't like trivially, like I get what I'm saying is this should probably be just part of like the shutdown process of the operator, or it needs to be associated with some resource so that they can use a finalizer to clean it up themselves. I think I don't know, like it seems like this is really tied into the whole like operator deletion story where OLM needs to know about all the stuff that the operator created and try to delete it. And I think I have some fundamental concerns about us building something like that that is safe and performant and all that.
Yeah, we tried.
Goodness.
We tried.
Yeah.
We tried to do that. Definitely, it's not as simple as it sounds to implement that.
I mean,
okay, so
this seems like
yeah.
it's even asking for basically OLM to man in the middle requests to the API server to like add extra things, which seems not what we would want to do at all, right? Like it's basically saying, I have an init container that's going to try to create some resources. When I try to create those, go ahead and please also add this extra stuff for me. But that would require us to basically proxy the API server.
So do we really just need some best practices and how do you do cleanup on your operator and how do you hook into the, using finalizers and so forth to clean up your own resources?
Yeah, and another option, so finalizers seem like a reasonable option. Another option could potentially be an owner reference on one of the other things, whether it's the CSV or the deployment for the operator.
Yeah, I think we want to avoid telling people to life cycle alongside like the the stamp of the CSV.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the hard part is like some of these things are maybe specific to the actual instance of the operator pod itself, in which case it's totally fine to lifecycle with the deployment or the CSV. But the problem is there are probably other cases where I want these things to be long lived and live through upgrades of my operator, in which case, like, where do you put that then? Like, maybe you could put it on the subscription, but that seems bad in its own ways.
All right, I'm proposing we close this issue. I don't think I explained it 100% great, but we're not going to implement this type of feature. So the best we can do is provide guidance on how to clean up this resource.
Maybe rather than just closing it, we can reach out and ask, is there a reason why the operator can't do the cleanup logic itself? Just so it's friendlier.
And do we have a good representation in the upstream for that operator delete stuff we've been working on? That would be an opportunity here to make sure they're well aware of it. So I see, maybe is that the 1996 above that he's linked to?
The kubectl operator stuff.
Yeah, whatever that is, right?
Right.
Like
I
we did some work in this space, so maybe it's not exactly what they're asking for, but it's still relative. So
Yeah.
we can't do exactly what you're asking for, but please look at this, and this might get you part of the way there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm working on it now. Definitely, if we could show it off a bit, that's a great idea. Is there so
Another potential path we could think about is like, can we expose any extensions that operator authors can use to like hook their resources up to the operator object? Right, because it's like basically just a label selector that uses to like find, I don't know if that looks for specific resource types, but like I wonder if we could extend that to say like anything that has this label selector will tell you about in the operator's status resources. I don't know if that has any side effects for other things that we do with those operator instances, but that's another at least avenue to think about.
okay. I'm just gonna leave this comment. I'm not gonna close it. Again, I think this is probably all right. I'll leave this as a feature, maybe add support. I think I can take this on since it's kind of related to some of the stuff that I'm doing. Milestone, I think this is probably just backlog, right? Since there's not, it's not entirely clear.
Yeah, well, I think that depending on how they reply, it might be that we just close this, but
Right.
I think that's fair for now.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. Streamline upstream release process. This is my issue. Basically, I cut the upstream release recently, and I found it to be pretty manual and fragile process. This ticket is around maybe doing something like what Joe proposed they do in the SDK, which seems really nice, and it uses something called Go Releaser, which is like a pretty well-known way of releasing Go-based projects. So I don't know. I just want to propose it to the team because I think part of this is also the fact that we don't release that much. upstream, and I think we want that to change. We want to release more frequently. So then we want to maybe have a process like this to make it a lot more straightforward.
I'm a big plus one on this. I think another benefit we could get would be the way that SDK releases is GitHub Actions actually is the thing that runs the Docker build and push rather than relying on Quay, which potentially gives us the ability to build for multiple platforms, and that'll close out some other issues that people are asking about for PowerPC, and can't remember which ones we don't support right now, but we may be able to kill two birds with one stone with this.
Yeah. And I think part of this is also, Kevin, you had that upstream like release doc that's just been floating around for months now. I'd really like to merge that at some point. Sorry, you had a PR.
Yeah, it probably needs to get updated based on much of the stuff we've been doing for the last few months. I have not had time to even think about it. If you want to take that one over, I would be, more than happy to hand it over to you.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think we should talk about that because I know that that's related to this. But okay, it seems like we have. Joe is saying we have some buy-in to try to change the way we release our upstream process, our upstream release, right? So
I don't mind taking this if no one else wants to.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Milestone, we will put this.
My vote would be, given our current release timelines, like 019 would be in a couple months, so I would hope that we could have something done by then. Yeah, that'd be my vote.
Okay. I just kind of want to link this. I want to link this to the other PR that we had. I think it's against community, right, Kevin?
I think it's against OLM. Hold on, let me see if I can find the PR.
Okay, yeah. This one. Yeah, this one. Okay. 1812. Cool. Yeah, because they are certified together. Okay, so it's 10:30. I guess we can. Let's do a few more OLM ones. Operators installed on different namespaces in the same cluster with the manual approval strategy upgrading automatically. Oh, right. So this is the one that we thought could actually be a serious bug. I think we discussed this at some point.
Did anybody test this? Because it seems really bad if it's true.
Do we think this is an OLM bug, or it almost sounds like it'd be a console bug?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I clicked on upgrade available.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. It's still bad, but it would just mean
Oh, yeah.
that maybe there's an aggregation problem in the console as opposed to OLM is not blocking manual upgrades with some edge case. Can we, before we even reply, can we just like prove it out on a cluster?
I think it's okay to reply and say like, "Oh, this is interesting. Like, we'll go investigate." Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Let's make sure we don't say like, hey, this is the console, good luck.
I'm sure we have end-to-end tests that test the scenario, right? Like I'm pretty sure I've seen a test that does basically this. I can double check that.
you could just ask, like, "Have you ever seen this behavior outside of using the console?" But I agree with Kevin. I think we should still go double check just to be double sure.
Okay. So this is going to be bug. Milestone. Seems like we're, I think we might need to put into the next stage because we're either going to close it in the sense that it's not, or like, you know, move it to console or something, or
If it ends up being OLM's bug, I think it sounds pretty urgent. We should fix it in 019. So that's where I
right.
would put it.
Yeah, I think like either way, it's going to go into our release. Is anyone interested in checking this out?
I can give it a shot.
Okay. Joe. Cool. All right. Let's keep going here. We'll do one or two more OLM ones. Don't go to the registry. So this is another issue I opened. This is also due to this is also related to the upstream release process. Basically, our upstream OLM images were based on Alpine and Golang Alpine to build, but when in our latest release we moved off of Docker Hub based images entirely due to the new rate limiting policies. So now we're using these distroless image, but we decided to use the debug tag, the static debug image, because that has a shell, which the previous Alpine based images also had. But I think we want to move away from producing images that are entirely static Go binaries that have a shell in them, but for backwards compatibility, that's what we did for 0.18.0. So I don't know if, first of all, this is related to the other upstream release issue. So that's definitely, yeah. So this can be basically folded into this process, into this, I think. If we're going to change the process, we can definitely change the image as well. What do folks think?
I'm
We don't
not
have-
sure I follow. Like they feel like different things.
Right.
Like the reason why we didn't do this now is because then folks wouldn't be able to shell into the running container, which they could before, and we didn't want to just take away that feature. Seems like in order to do this, we'd have to just like put out a notice on the repo that's like, oh, hey, we're going to deprecate this. I mean, I guess like we're not at V1, so it's kind of like at your own risk, but feels like, you know, if anybody's relying on this, it could be problematic.
I mean, it's probably pretty, are there any cases where people should be literally relying on there being a shell in a container that's running in Kubernetes?
No,
I mean,
no.
if
No,
they
they
if
should
they're
not.
not good at if they're not, I mean, usually this just means some other fundamental thing about the cluster failed, and they don't have a way of looking at, you know, logs or whatever.
I would say, like, just from my perspective and my 2 cents, since we're not 1.0, I would think that it's perfectly fine to make this as a breaking change. And sure, we should document it and say, like, here's what we're doing, and here's why. But I wouldn't lose sleep over this type of breaking change pre 1.0.
So these are all of the images for OLM and catalog and all that kind of stuff, right? Is what you're talking about?
I think we're talking
Yeah.
about catalog operator, the OLM operator.
Right, okay. So yeah, from IBM's perspective, like when I debug stuff, I never rely on the shell being there. I always use the logs. The logs have been sufficient, I guess. I haven't purposely needed to shell into those things.
Yes, I think once you shell into it, it's already you know, it's already not good. I feel pretty strongly. So it seems
The
like we
only
have,
advantage to keeping it in is because it is not a GA release yet. It's kind of handy to be there in case you need to debug something because it's immature. That's the kind of the only thing I can suggest, maybe keeping it in for a while. If you guys ever use it for any purposes like that, when you're debugging customer problems.
I don't think we do. I think this was literally just an accident, right? Like, oh, let's choose Alpine, and there we are. And it just happens to have a shell in it. I don't know if there's any thought. Maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if there's any thought process in terms of like, oh, we should choose this specific image because it has a shell in it.
actually, does Alpine have a shell in it by default?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
Let's
it's like
install
ASH. ASH.
ASH. Okay, so it does have a. Okay, all right. So it does, I just confirm because I remember you have to maybe you have to install a different shell. Anyway, okay. All right. So what do we want to do with this one? Seems like we feel comfortable just dropping the debug tag basically. Basically is the solution.
I think so, but I don't think it needs to be tied to the other issue. Like we can just go and change this separately.
Okay. If it's not tied to the other issue, then it you know, it is basically just a quick change in the manifest. Okay. So we probably want to do this before the next release, right? And does anyone feel like they want to take it on? I can take it on. It's basically just changing an image tag, but
I think the only thing I would say is if we're going to change it to distroless static, I think it's just as easy as changing the image tag. If we're going to change it to Scratch, I think I was saying this before, but I'm like, I have slight concerns about like, you know, are there anything with CA certs or Etsy password or any of those other types of things that we rely on that we might not catch in our tests? And maybe the answer is no, in which case we can use Scratch just fine. But I would say if we want to choose Scratch, we probably want to do a little bit extra testing to make sure that that's okay.
yeah, I think we discussed this, is to go with this. I think you're right. I think you make the case it could be search or something else involved. Okay. Okay. Cool. So that's tracked alongside the other release, upstream release one. Okay. Last one for OLM are configure environment variables on OpenShift console. Okay, so this is a console issue. Can we just recommend that they open it against the console? Yeah, this is a non limitation, right? This is the subscription config. Basically, when we were talking to the Redis customers, or we were talking to some users, they were saying that again the UI is limited in what it can do for the subscription config versus.
Yeah, but this is a console thing. I think we should point them to the console and close this.
Is it under operator framework or where?
The console is in OpenShift.
Okay.
Here, I'll find the link. It's just OpenShift console.
All right, cool. So let's just get the registry, I guess, really quick. Oh, sorry. Let's use this instead. Okay. Bundle validation discrepancies between operator registry and API projects.
Hey, John, I think you're on the call.
Yeah, I'm on the call. I don't know if you can hear me very well or not, but basically this one is about, I've noticed that the actual implementation, I understand that there's a different validator for the registry project in terms of being able to pull down images and whatever. And so there's a whole interface around that. To handle the pulling down and extracting and actually then running the validators. But the actual implementation of the validators is different between the different projects. So I guess the question I had was that, is there any effort that needs to be expended here to try to move some of the validation or, basically to merge the two implementations and or just remove the implementation that's in the registry one and use the one that's in the API version, because right now there's two separate ones, and depending on what project you're using, you're going to get different results. So I don't know if that makes sense or if I've explained that well enough.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, Kevin, you can speak to this. I think we probably want to move the validation into API and make sure it's consistent, since that way it can be called by different projects, really.
So I'm just trying to look. I had thought that what it did is just import the API project and run it. So what's the difference? Like what is in registry that's not in the API project aside from like validating images?
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact details. I just know that there were differences in the, I think it was in bundle. So like, I think the links that I went, straight to this particular, this is that one's the API implementation.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see it. There's just some code in here that looks like it's like parsing things. Yeah, it seems reasonable to try to just like call the API interface rather than re-implement anything here. Stuff's gonna get out of date.
Oh, I think, Kevin, remember we kind of talked about this one point when I was trying to implement something and we found that one of the things is that the registry and the API have a different view of what a CSV is.
There's some. Yes, I think that there's some differences because like the registry cares about certain fields at bundle add time that you don't actually care about at runtime. I don't know that like we want to have a difference between those two things because from the perspective of like I'm a person who is building a bundle, they just want it to work. They don't care about the implementation details of those two things.
I think some of those things have been fixed recently where we added like the related images and there's maybe one or two other fields that I think we added on the API side. I did just link in the chat. There's a separate bundle validation library in operator registry that actually looks very similar to what you've got up now, Dan.
Yeah, this is in registry.
Yeah,
it looks almost like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems broken. We should probably try to merge them somehow.
Okay, so it seems like something we definitely want to. Okay, now I've lost the original issue. But it seems like it's definitely something we want to do.
Yeah.
So if you want, I can take a crack at trying to merge the two. Basically, I think if I understand correctly, that we'll take if there's differences in the behavior, we want to make sure that we take the ones that are in registry, put them back into API, and then switch the registry to actually use the API bundle implementation. I think that's the overall flow of what needs to happen here.
I think there might be one caveat, and maybe Kevin, you might know more about this than I do, but if there are differences, I think those might actually need to be reviewed and decided like, well, which one wins? Like, do we choose the existing API version of the validator for that particular thing, or do we choose the operator registry one? And there might even be a case where we do say, oh, for the operator registry use case, we need to have this extra or different validation that's not part of the API. But I don't know. I haven't looked at this before, so I could just be totally off base.
Yeah, the only other thing I think I haven't looked at this code in a very long time, so I could be wrong. But I think the only other thing that might be in the registry is the registry has code to like pull the container image, and I'm wondering if it inspects the container image. It might do some validation against like the image itself, and that's stuff that I think can only live in the registry, and it's probably not something that we would put in the API project.
Yeah. So I think this is maybe more of like a deduplication effort and make sure that registry uses API for the things that API validates, and registry uses its own libraries for the things that only it needs to validate.
Yep. Okay, that's fair. So then that means you would not only have to include in the validation of the list of all the validators, you'd have to include the one that's actually for the registry specific ones, as well as the ones that are for API. So that way, when you run it from registry, you're getting both behaviors.
If that's necessary, I think that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll check to see what the actual implementations are and make sure that they're, just to see what they're doing, and if one can't be actually implemented. I mean, if they can be potentially implemented in ABI, then go for it, merge and move that code over. And if it can't, then it still continues to live in a registry. And then we have to have the two different bundle implementations that get executed.
Yeah,
together.
that sounds good to me. I think that seems like the right thing to do. And I think if you're working on this and you get stuck or have a question or whatever, just throw it up on Slack and we'll try to reply as soon as we can.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, cool. I'm just gonna leave a note here with a little bit of context. This will be recorded as well, so just more context in the video. Comment. Do we want to put it maybe in the backlog now? I kind of see.
I think that seems fine. This doesn't seem like incredibly urgent, but it would be a nice cleanup and refactoring to do, is my take.
Yeah, I think backlog is appropriate. I mean, okay, moving on.
Real quick, so just to make sure I'm understanding, so John, is there anything that's like broken or messed up as a result of this that like needs to get resolved more quickly, or is it just like oh, that'd be nice if
Well, it was because I'm actually trying to consume some of these components myself and some of the internal tooling that we're creating. And as I ran into the problem because of the fact that I'm wait a second, I expected this error to actually show up and it didn't, and then started digging into it and found out that wait a second, we've got two different implementations, and the API one seemed to be maintained, and then the registry one didn't seem to have any activity on it, and so that raised the whole question. So it's more about it just saw the inconsistency and wanted to make sure that it was somehow discussed and addressed.
Is it possible to do what you need to do with what exists, or do we need to change something to unblock you?
Yeah, so far, for my usage of it, I'm actually leveraging both code bases anyways. So it's fine for me.
Okay. Okay. In that case, I think backlog is probably fine then for now. Thanks for taking this on.
Sure.
Okay, last issue. Index permission denied on OpenShift. This is a permissions issue.
This almost sounds like it could be like a UMask problem.
We had a bug with an existing version of the registry where we were, excuse me, where we were just implicitly taking the UMask of the terminal session and applying it to whatever resources it was creating. And I thought we had fixed it to just force it to rewrite, but I don't know. It might be that they're using an older version, or that they're running this on like an old version of OpenShift, and that doesn't have that fix, or maybe something's not working. I don't know. It looks like they're using the upstream, so it should work.
Might be worth asking, does OPM have like a version subcommand or some way to tell what commit it's from? Could we ask for?
Yeah, it definitely has a version.
Which reminds me, we might want to update our issue template to ask for some of that kind of information from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the newer versions of OPM do that, but the older versions, there are all sorts of little bugs where it either showed you the wrong version or missing versions. And if you're upstream or downstream, it depends. So it's a little bit tricky.
I'm just gonna leave this comment asking basically for more information. This does seem like it is a bug, but it may actually not be may be fixed already. Seems like it would be potentially something we want to fix if it is a bug in our current release. So do we feel like we want to put in 117?
I think 117 is already released. I don't know if you've been adding other things to 117, but I'm going to go and clean those up too. I would say 118.
Okay. 118. And in terms of assignment, is that anyone interested in being assigned to this one? Do we know who worked on the original UMass type fix?
It's been a while. I don't know off the top of my head. You can assign it to me for now, and then I can track it down.
Okay, I mean, you definitely know about most about the registry anyway. So. That makes sense. Okay, and it looks like we are really just about on time here, so I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you everyone for attending the bug triage today. And we'll see you at the working group meeting next week. Bye everyone.